welcome to the show. I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm used to only being around for a short period of time, and just
Yeah, I'll just leave that.
Bobby, much like Bobby being an American, yes, and September 11th obviously brings up a lot of memories and emotions. Just quickly, I think it's appropriate to touch on that. I was at St. Lawrence University, 2001 when it all shook out. I was a freshman, and man, it rocked our campus really, really hard. And even people within the hockey world, it's tough to find somebody who wasn't either directly affected or knew somebody that was. It just shows how small that world is. So wanted to touch on that right off the top of the bat, that it's a pretty somber day in American history.
I did look it up. I did notice you were playing at St. Lawrence. Bobby, you were a U15 player, I think. And Yorkie, you were in Anaheim. Was it the first day of camp for you? It was the first day of Sens camp for Ottawa.
I was driving down the 5 freeway. Bob, you know that very well. It's like a traffic jam. And listening to Howard Stern show. And Howard Stern, I'll never forget, he was freaking out. And went to the rink. Practice canceled. I think we canceled practice for like the next couple of days. Never forget it. Surreal moment. And Steve hit the nail on the head. We all know people. It was just such a terrible day. I actually just watched the documentary on Netflix. Man, it was the devastation. Like, I'll never forget it. Yeah, no, I was right in the prime of my career. So very tough day.
That's funny you mentioned I was in California as well. I was in El Segundo, right next to LAX, where my mom was working at the time, and me up to tell me about it. And she was at the airport where all the planes were heading. So obviously sent right home because everything shut down. But we spent the day watching it together. So yes, Mike hit the nail on that. It's a very somber day in America.
As you guys know, the weight room in Ottawa, back in that day, they used to allow the media in, the guys would be on bikes, right? We all made fun of this, but
it's not a big weight room in the first place either. It's pretty cramped quarters.
Right? It was so tight, and 2 rows of bikes. Anyway, Chris Phillips and I stood and watched on the monitor how it played out. It was surreal. Like, you're trying to talk about, hey, the new season, and you know that there is something transpiring here right now that's bigger than anybody ever imagined. I'll never forget. I can picture everything in that room that day of just sitting there watching and trying to understand how the whole world is evolving at that moment. Anyway,
I think the big thing is, for us, like, and we could go on forever about this. It's for our generation, really. I mean, everybody that's sitting here, it's kind of our JFK moment. We know exactly where we were when we found out that was happening. And, for better or worse, those are defining moments in humanity, right? History, not just your own life. So I wish that we didn't have that all in common, but it is something that we always look back on. And I was at school, I was going to camp, and kind of bonds us all at one time too.
Yes, it does. So a terrible day. And I know certainly the world has changed since then. Our thoughts, obviously, to all the families affected back in September the 11th. But Mike, I do want to touch on some other stuff as we've got you here for a short period of time. One, Tarasenko extremely well since you're in St. Louis. I want to be able to ask you about him, and also Joonas Korpisalo. So you being the goalie, we're going to start with the goalie talk. Can you give us your opinion on him and what Sens fans should expect from Joonas Korpisalo this season?
So I will be first to admit here that last season I was really impressed with how Korpisalo bounced back after coming off a surgery. So if you look at this from the grand scheme of things, it's like, this guy's not played great hockey for 2 years for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Where's he going to be? He gets a 1-year contract with them going into last season from Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM. And I'm like, he's kind of lucky he got that considering his health. Well, turns out that his hips were in such bad shape and he needed that surgery that you could see why he had been limited the previous 2 years. And he'd always been viewed as a great prospect. He'd also been he won a Calder Cup in the American Hockey League, ironically enough, with Anton Forsberg. They were teammates. They were goalie partners. By the way, I love that dynamic. But Korpisalo was the guy for Columbus, and injuries derailed him. What I saw last year was a little bit more in control of a goaltender, largely because he was healthy. He could rotate. He was getting square to pucks. He was closer to home. He wasn't chasing and fighting for the puck as much as he had to in the past. So I was really impressed with him. He outperformed Elvis Merzlikins, who was supposed to be the guy in Columbus last year. He outperformed him by a mile. And that's not saying a lot because Merzlikins was frankly awful last year, and I can't wait to see how he rebounds. But, when Korpisalo went from Columbus to LA, he just kept continuing on with the production he'd had previously. I think Jonas Korpisalo is a good NHL goaltender. I think he's had flashes of greatness in the past. I don't know if he'll ever be an all-star. I don't know if he's going to be in a Vezina conversation. But I think Korpisalo is a guy you could win a Stanley Cup with. I mean, look at Adin Hill in Las Vegas. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Korpisalo is every bit as good or better than Adin Hill is. I like his ceiling. And again, I really like the fact that him and Forsberg are together, knowing that they've had success previously as a tandem. Guys, you know what it's like when you've got goalies that get along and feed off one another. That's a powerful thing in the locker room.
Mike, especially the Finns too, right? The Finns are a different breed. They work hard. They're just great guys, but
they play hard.
Yeah, right. Hey, but they come to work the next day and put the work in.
They do.
But what I heard, like, two real good guys, and you mentioned the time in the minors. Interesting enough too, they won that Calder Cup. It was actually Forsberg was the man back then. If you look at the stats from that playoff run, Forsberg was the man, but two great prospects. So I don't know. I love it. You're the goalie though. Like, having two guys from the same country, that's going to push them too, because the Finns are competitive guys too. Like, they love to compete.
Yeah, and both really good guys, man. That's been the point there. Like, I know Forsberg really well from when he first came across. We were in Springfield together briefly, and just an awesome guy. I don't know if anybody's still calling him Fapa or not. I really tried to make that nickname stick. I think it lasted a little while, but like, Bobby, you've had Finnish goalies. You've had everything under the sun, I think, and you can kind of attest to it though that these two, I think, especially just Finns in general, man, they're usually really cool, dude. Like, I mean, like Tuukka Rask, I think of immediately. Just everything rolls off their back. You think about a market like Ottawa, Toronto, like Bobby. I think these guys can do pretty well there, given their demeanor.
I do. Finns don't let anything bother them either. Whatever you have to say about them, they're not hearing. And I don't know. I played with a couple Finns that didn't show up to work the next maybe 2 or 3 times towards the end of their career. But that being said, it's hard to meet a bad Finn. It really is. You got to work.
They've been my favorite. They really have.
Yeah, and they're chippy little fuck. Can't say that, but they're chippy. They're all chippy. They're all a lot of fun. So I love the dynamic too. I don't know the two of these personally, but I've heard really, really, really good Forsberg. Not so much about Korpisalo because he's not known to the players here, but if he comes in and just is the way every other Finn is, I think he'll have success blending in.
Bobby, you just brought it. You remind me of a story, man, where you said the one guy didn't show up the next day. So when I was on the back nine in my career, Mike, you'll like this. I was playing in Lugano, and the guys running the team, there was me, Glenn Metropolit, and we had 3 Finns. We had Ville Peltonen, Tepeli Numelin, and Jukka Hentunen. Jukka Hentunen, I always wondered why I didn't drink. And then one we went up to the Alps to play on this outdoor classic game. We lost. He went MIA for 2 days. he got on the sauce and he was gone.
That's incredible.
I played with a guy like that once who, I will leave his name out of this, but yeah, it was the same way. And this is actually, I mean, it's a great story for anybody that's ever struggled with stuff. I mean, Bobby, anyone else, like, we're all open to this. That he, this player who I was teammates with, he completely got clean for like a year or so. We had rookie party. He thought he'd have a drink or two, and it was the same thing. Like, he ended up kicking down his door. He was gone for 2 days from practice. Like, it shows you how fast somebody can relapse to that if they're not careful. But but man, when it's somebody you don't expect, it's like, it can be funny as long as it's not like a serious matter, and sometimes it's full. I got one more thing quick on Korpisalo, though. I'll tell you this. I know a lot of people within the Columbus organization that skate with him all the time. That team was absolutely pulling for Korpisalo as a teammate, and when he went to LA. To me, that's a great sign. It's somebody that they all really like in the locker room, that really they respect the fact that he works that hard. And coming back from an injury to get to that position, just like Forsberg's going to be doing, which is a little bit concerning, right? He's coming off that major injury. You're going to need that.
Yeah,
very much so.
Also, just because Yorkie, you said it and people are upset with you, you said they were both Finns and Forsberg is Swedish. So before people yell at us.
Oh, bad on me. Why do I keep thinking he's a Finn? I think I've said that like 4 times.
It's okay. I still love you.
Such a good guy.
Yeah. Mike, let's get to Tarasenko briefly. Give us your thoughts. Is he the right fit here? Will he have that motivating year where he's trying to get a contract and make bigger money? How do you see this playing out?
I think Vladdy's going to be fine. I don't know if he'll score 40 goals. If people are expecting that, I don't think you're going to see it. I think you're going to see 30, 32, might even drop into the 20s, high 20s. But I think he's going to be a serviceable player. He better be. I mean, he's on a pretty good value contract realistically for what you're looking in terms of output. But he had his best years lately. Like even during the Stanley Cup run with St. Louis, I think he was respected as a weapon on the power play, and only at 5-on-5 when he wanted to be respected. And there's moments where Tarasenko will grab the puck and you go, man, this guy's a world beater. He's still got it. In some games, you just don't notice him. So there's a real concern with that. But if you put the puck on Tarasenko's stick, he can shoot it a ton. And he's a little bit different than DeBrincat if you're looking at comparables directly here, right? I mean, he's essentially brought in to fill that gap in scoring. And to me, I think Tarasenko's a layover guy. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys.
Yep.
Like
you're right.
I know layovers well because that was my entire career. I was the layover guy. Bring him in for a season until our prospects are ready, or half a season until we need to get somebody else in quickly because he sucks. But I think Tarasenko is going to factor in the power play because you look at the top grouping for Ottawa now. Is he going to is Kubalik going to knock Tarasenko off his throne on the right side of the power? No chance, right? Like Tarasenko's to me a more consistent scorer, a more consistent driver of play than a Kubalik who's fairly inconsistent as well, even though he can fill it when he wants to. So I think he helps in that regard. I like the dynamic with Tkachuk, especially if they're playing together. Like they've skated together in St. Louis in the summers here for, I don't know, a decade, man. So you've got a bit of familiarity there. But I think he's going to be a consistent performer, but not great. I don't know. You guys have a different read on that?
Mike, it's going to be interesting because Josh Norris is the shooter on their power play.
Right.
He's the 1T guy on that left side. Brady Tkachuk's your net front. Batherson's your bumper. Stützle's on the flank, and you got a D. So I don't know where Tarasenko fits on the first unit. Like they're not pulling Josh Norris off, who's on making 7 on a long-term deal. They're not taking Brady off. It's going to be interesting, but hey, you can put him on the second power play, and you need that still too, right? So
yeah, and he works best, but he's going downhill towards the net.
Yeah,
he needs the puck on his blade, funneling to the net. Like Tarasenko, Taylor Hall, like these types of players that are. Yeah. To me, when they're coming at you as a goalie, it's when it's scariest. Tarasenko actually doesn't score many goals on a one-timer or big slap shots.
No, he doesn't.
Shots. And he again though he is a more dynamic player than people realize sometimes. When he's engaged and healthy and feeling the flow, he can lug the puck pretty well. So I do think he'll probably be more of a depth piece power play, but 5-on-5, I'm curious to see where he ends up.
Well, Bob, you mentioned he loves to be on the right side and come across on that and use the D as a screen, right? And that's tough for goalies, like that type of shot. And he's got a heavy shot too, right?
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing for him too is he's not going to have to do anything more than shoot. If he's playing with a Stützle or Giroux, the puck's because of those two guys lugging the mail and opening up their knees. So he's going to get the looks that he's wanting to generate. The power play thing, interesting. I think I don't believe is interesting because you have your power play. That second unit's going to be mixed in with Giroux and whoever else.
Yeah.
That job is going to be to put so much pressure on the first unit that they overtake them. And that's going to be a healthy rivalry throughout the year. And he's just going to add to it. So I think it'll be great. I like how Mike's very cautiously optimistic about it. He's going to be exactly what you look for, but he is in terms what you want to call him a layover guy. He is what's going to work long-term for the Ottawa Senators because when they're ready to compete, he's going to be 34, right? He's not going to be your guy at that point. So he's a perfect fit for what they need.
Yeah.
Yep. I would temper expectations.
I agree.
He's not going to be on the cover of EA Sports ever again.
Yeah.
But you plan on him popping 28, 30, 32 goals. He better do that. And I think that he's hungry for sure. Like, I think this summer was a wake up call for him too, guys. Like, you didn't get that 4-year deal at 6 per. It didn't happen. Like that was the ask was $6 million per, and every team in the league balked on it. Yeah. So Bit of a wake-up call, man, what that market's like right now.
Yeah, it's a perfect year.
Okay, finally, last few minutes, Jake Sanderson, who just signed a monster deal, as you know. You like him. Tell us why and what it is about Jake Sanderson that you like.
Yeah, more than anything, I like his career trajectory, man. Like, to come right out of Division I college hockey and play top minutes in the NHL as a defenseman. I mean, I thought it was hard as a goalie to come in my 4th year after playing in the Coast in the American League. Like, he skipped everything and went right in at 20. So that's impressive to me, but I really like the fact that he played all 3 situations. You know, he was the top killer on the team. You know that he instantly has the trust of the coaching staff. And were there growing pains? Of course. He's 20. But by the end of the year, I thought, for me, this is who you're looking at. Like, we're counting on this guy. Like, even more than a Thomas Chabot, who I love, man. Like, Thomas will go right up the ice with the puck. Thomas will get the puck to the net on a power play, but you're not going to stick him out on the kill like you will with Sanderson. So I think there's untapped offensive potential from Sanderson, but I think his all-around game is what really lends itself to being a star in the league eventually, frankly. Yeah. And when you factor in now that you've got Chabot and Chychrun and Sanderson and Zub, and like, I mean, I'm not enthralled with Brandstrom or Homonic, but that's a pretty damn good top 4. Yeah. And especially considering he's 20. Now that contract, though, I got to tell you, man, like, I'm starting to come around on these projection contracts. Like Stützle's last year, I just went, oh man, this is a gamble. And I'm looking at Sanderson's team, I'm going, boy, here's another gamble. But the teams do know the players the best. And I do think with the salary cap going up $4 or $5 million over the next year or two, most likely, unless the RSN providers completely tank in the US, which could happen and suck 200 mil right on out of there. I had a conversation with the GM about that, and they're worried about that. You could be 250 mil out of the system if the RSNs, regional sport network providers in the US tank. But I think it'll be a good deal for Sanders. It's a great deal for Sanderson. I hope it's a good deal for the team. I do wonder this, though, guys. Do you think he's $8.05 million for a reason, and it has to do with Chabot? To me, I'm telling you, like, I think they
grand more
in it closer to $7 million if his contract didn't have to eclipse the current number 1 on the team. So I think it puts a lot of pressure on Thomas, dude, because I think they're going to want to keep Chychrun around. I'd want to keep Chychrun around. And I think Shabby's going to have to just show, like, hey, I'm worth that $8 million still. Keep me around. Let's have this dynamic 3 on the back end for years to come whenever it's time for Chychrun to re-up.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm never too stressed if I'm coming to the rink making 8 sheets.
It was early.
Just lastly, before you go, do the Sens make the playoffs this year, Mike McKenna?
You know, I still think they're a year or 2 away. I know people are going to hate that because people have been hearing it's their year for like 3 years. Come on now, realistically, look at that roster a year ago, 2 years ago. Like they're still not quite there. I still think you need a year or 2 of growth of some of the prospects. And I wonder, and I'm not throwing shade. I promise I hate doing this, but you start to wonder though, would this team respond to even more change, right? New ownership, a lot of roster. I can't help but wonder what it would look like with a new coach at some point. Okay. And I mean, I hope DJ Smith goes out and crushes and the team's great off the bat. I hope they make the playoffs and everything else. But I think there's a ton of pressure on DJ Smith early in the season here, a ton of pressure because there's going to be that feeling that if I'm feeling it, you know, the GM's feeling it, you know, everybody else is too. It's just reality in this sport. We all know it. And if you want pressure, you want to be a head coach in the NHL, you got to go out and perform just like your players.
Okay, quickly. Sorry. I told people in the chat I would ask this question to you. Does being a good buddy with your other goalie in your tandem have a big impact on your play? Is that a real thing, or people push the narrative for a good story?
No, it did for me. I'm telling you straight up from my perspective, it did. Because I'd be able to go to the bench, talk to my goalie partner, ask him what he'd seen. You know, you saw something funny happen and you can laugh during the game. Yeah. The only player in a locker room that knows what you're going through as a goaltender is the other goaltender.
Yeah.
It's the only one. And if you have a good relationship, you work together. The best part for the team is that the team's going to win games. Is it a healthy rivalry? Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's no different than 2 quarterbacks that want the ball all the time. Every goalie wants it. But if you can come in and perform and be a good teammate, it helps everybody. Yep, I think it matters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I appreciate it. Mike McKenna, thank you for stopping by. We will
Anytime,
gladly have
guys.
you back.
Hate to cut short. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate. We got lots to ask you next time when you come back because
Yeah.
I'm going to make you come back.
You
'cause we
got
love
it.
you in Ottawa.
See you later,
take care.
Rattler.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.